the Prime Minister, dear Boris Johnson, for this first visit to France after becoming Prime Minister. We have had telephone conversations in the past, notably after becoming Prime Minister, and I'm delighted to have the opportunity today to have lengthier discussions. The relationship between our two countries is, in my view, essential and indestructible, whatever the time and whatever the circumstances. It is notably with regard to foreign policy, defense, and I can see in your choice of visiting Paris the need to sustain this privileged relationship. This relationship has had a long and deep history. There are treaties that have been signed which go beyond the limits of the European Union, and there are deep commitments in different crises and questions such as Iran, the Sahel, the fight against climate change, education of girls. The involvement of our countries has always played a key role. The G7 will be beginning in a few days' time. Our meeting will enhance coordination between us on those issues. We will also discuss Brexit, of course. And you know my position, which is clear, and I know you're spending your nights and days thinking about this, Mr. Prime Minister. My position has always been to respect the sovereign choice made by the British people to leave the European Union. I regret this decision. If I'd been a British elector, I wouldn't have voted into it. But democracy is based on the sovereignty of the people, so I fully respect the British choice, and it has to be implemented. My position is to strengthen and protect the European project, the single market, our decision to develop a stronger and more sovereign Europe. And that's why I have always adopted the position that we must not weaken the European project. Finally, we need to preserve and deepen our bilateral relationship and looking to the future. It's in this spirit that the EU has negotiated at length a withdrawal agreement with the United Kingdom. I'm not going to dwell on the details of this agreement. No country of the EU alone can negotiate or renegotiate this agreement. But I would like to say the key features of this agreement, such as the Irish backstop, are not mere technical obstacles, but they are indispensable guarantees for preserving stability in Ireland, the integrity of the single market, the very basis of the European project, and form part and parcel of this agreement, which was signed after long negotiations by the EU and the UK. The EU has always said it is available to discuss our future relations, which are key, and which will play a key role for our future. We will be discussing all of this with the Prime Minister. I would like to say, as a friend and ally of the United Kingdom, that it is up to the UK alone to choose its destiny. The way they withdraw and the foundations of the future relationship with Europe depend on the UK. We will be preparing for all scenarios, including a no-deal exit or withdrawal in October. It is not the EU's choice, but it is our joint responsibility towards our citizens, our territories, our businesses, to be ready, to be prepared. And that's what we have already done. I know that the future of the United Kingdom, based on our history and our values, is in Europe. Our geography is obstinate in this regard, and I'm confident when I say that the future will confirm, beyond the inevitable vicissitudes of current affairs. Those are the few words I wish to say when I express the pleasure of welcoming Boris Johnson, Mr. Prime Minister, to have you here in the Élysée. Merci beaucoup, Monsieur le Président. Merci, Emmanuel.
In Paris, and I thank you for the wonderful welcome. Listen, in view of what you've just said and in view of your remarks overnight about Brexit, I want to come straight to that particular point. I want to make it absolutely clear to you, Emmanuel, to the French people, that, of course, I want a deal. and I think we can get a deal, and a good deal. And I was powerfully encouraged by our conversations last night in Berlin with our mutual friends. And I know that with energy and with creativity and application, we can find a way forward for all our businesses and our citizens. But as you yourself have just pointed out, Emmanuel, it is vital for trust in politics that if you have a referendum, then you should act on the instructions of the voters. And that is why we must come out of the EU on October the 31st, deal or no deal. And then, of course, we can take our relationship forward. And when I say take it forward, I agree with you wholeheartedly, Emmanuel, that it is a quite extraordinary friendship. At this moment in Mali, French troops are being conveyed in British helicopters as we work together to fight terrorism in the Sahel. As we stand here together side by side at the Elysee, British troops and French troops are side by side in Estonia protecting the eastern borders of NATO. And when Assad's regime used chemical weapons against his own people, it was Britain and France together with our American friends who showed the collective revulsion of the West in taking out those chemical weapons facilities. Together, we built the world's first supersonic passenger aircraft. We built a tunnel under the Channel. And today, we're actually collaborating on genomics that hold out the hope of curing the world's most intractable diseases. At your G7 in Biarritz that you're chairing, which I'm sure will be a great success, Monsieur le Président, the UK and France will work hand in glove, coude à coude, to tackle climate change, to tackle the tragic loss of species and biodiversity, and as you rightly say, to ensure that every girl in the world gets 12 years of quality education. And I think whatever happens with Brexit, it is our joint ambition, UK and France, that we should deepen and intensify our economic interpenetration. And just as French buses, I'm proud to say, ply the streets of London, thanks to the unique openness of the UK economy, it is also a stunning fact that your beautiful TGVs run on steel railways made in Scunthorpe by British Steel. Not a lot of people know that. In fact, the British ambassador didn't know that until I just told him. But there could be no more powerful metaphor, I think, for the cultural, the economic, the political partnership between our countries. And I'm proud to say that in spite of some of the negative predictions over the last 3 years, our capital city in London remains one of the biggest French cities on earth. And long may it so remain. And I know that, of course, Monsieur le Président, you will want to treasure and support the hundreds of thousands of British citizens living here in France, as much as we in the UK will treasure and support the 3.2 million EU nationals, including French citizens in our country. So let's get Brexit done. Let's get it done sensibly and pragmatically and in the interests of both sides. And let's not wait until October the 31st. Let's get on now in deepening and intensifying the friendship and the partnership between us over lunch.
Déjeunons ensemble déjà, dans un premier temps.
Excellent. Je crois qu'on va prendre 2 questions.
We'll take a couple of questions now.
What does leaving without a deal actually mean? Does it mean trading on WTO rules for the long term? Or is it effectively back to square one with more negotiations? And in that sense, isn't no deal a bit of a con?
Well,
and Monsieur le Président, Angela Merkel showed some flexibility in Berlin last night over the question of changing the Irish backstop. Don't you think you should cut the new British Prime Minister a bit of slack as well?
Well, thank you very much, Libby. Of course, as you know, a great deal of work has already been done to ensure that the transition on October the 31st is as smooth as it possibly can be, and so there are already agreements on aviation, on financial services, many other sectors. And what we want to do now, between in the next 71 days or whatever is remaining, we want to make sure that we do all the necessary work on both sides of the channel to make sure that whether we get an agreement or not, our exit is as smooth and as pain-free as possible for citizens and businesses on both sides. And that's what we're going to do.
Sur la question que vous avez posée,
regarding the question you asked, I said it very clearly in my introduction. Where the Irish backstop was negotiated given the geographical realities of Ireland and the politics of Ireland. It guarantees the stability in Ireland and the integrity of the single market. Those are our objectives. When we talk about flexibility, I want to be very clear with you. Those two objectives must be respected. We must find a solution that ensures the integrity of the single market, and we must guarantee consumers, businesses, and citizens of Europe that the rules of the European Union will be complied with, and people who are no longer members of the EU and enter the EU have to be subject to controls. The Good Friday Agreement, of course, was signed in relation to the political situation in Ireland and our relations with Ireland. We must respect the negotiations concluded in the past. So we must keep in line with the framework of what has already been negotiated. But I'd like to draw your attention to another point. We talk about the withdrawal agreement. There will also be a negotiation on future relations. So we have to do things in the right order.
Can I just add one thing to that? Sorry, but just make it very clear, Monsieur le Président, that under no circumstances, when you look at the border with Northern Ireland, I'm just repeating a point that bears repeating, under no circumstances will the UK government be imposing checks or controls of any kind at that border. And we think, and I understand your desire to protect the integrity of the single market. Of course we understand that. But we think that there are ways of protecting the integrity of the single market and allowing the UK to exit from the EU whole and entire and perfect, as it were. And that is what we, and it was very interesting to hear some of the positive noises that we're now hearing about the ways that can be done. We look forward to developing those thoughts in the next few weeks.
Monsieur le Président, Rim Momtaz de Politico, est-ce que vous êtes sur la même ligne que
la chancelière? Do you agree
allemande,
with Chancellor Merkel, who wants to find an alternative to the backstop in 30 days? Mr. Prime Minister, what alternative options are there to the backstop? What Chancellor Merkel said yesterday, which is in line with the spirit of our exchanges, we need visibility within 30 days. And this is also the objective of Prime Minister Johnson. Nobody is going to wait until the 31st of October to find a good solution. If we don't find a good solution, we can't overnight solve all the problems. So we need to use the month, the next month. We will be mobilizing Michel Barnier and his team of negotiators and the British negotiators to find what can help us to overcome the obstacles. But the withdrawal agreement has already been subject to a lot of hard work and was the result of a unanimous decision by the 27 members of the EU. So like Chancellor Merkel, I believe that our collective intelligence and our desire to be constructive should allow us within the next 30 days to find a good solution. I have always been described as the toughest member of the gang. But because I have always clearly said that a choice has been made, so we have to implement the choice, and it's not by wasting time. It's not because we're not going to try and get around what the British people decided. We need to clarify the situation. So, as I have said since last spring, we must clarify things and arrive at an agreement. In the next month, we're not going to find a new withdrawal agreement that will be very different from what was already negotiated by Michel Barnier. So we have two objectives: stability in Ireland, integrity of the single market. We must find the solutions in the next month. Otherwise, it means the problem is deeper than that. It's to do with British politics. And this is not our negotiations. It's a political choice that the Prime Minister will have to make, not us.
Well, I of course, understand very clearly that what I think what Angela Merkel was saying last night, if I got her correct, I think I was standing next to her, she said, if we can do this in 2 years, then we can do this in 30 days. And I admire that can-do spirit that she seemed to have there. And I think she's right. I think that the technical solutions are readily available, and they've been discussed at great length. You can have trusted trader schemes. You can have electronic pre-clearing for goods moving across the border. I just want to repeat one crucial thing. Under no circumstances will the UK be putting checks at the frontier. And we don't think it's necessary from the point of view of the EU to do that to protect the integrity of the single market. We think there are other ways of doing that. We've got, I think, adequate time to do it. Let's get on and do it. As I say, there are all sorts of proposals that have already been made. I might direct you to an excellent paper that has been done by Greg Hands and other MPs in Westminster from all parties that goes through some of the ways in which you can check for contraband, check for rules of origin, check for stop smuggling, but not have checks at the frontier. That's the solution. And where there's a will, there's a way.
Merci beaucoup.